You know, I've been going through my YouTube videos and I see that my sound is horrendous. So I thought I'd try this. Let's see if this works. I think it might just work. Well, the substance and subject of this video is quite simply this. Is the magazine dead? I mean, with the closing of magazines like this, House and Leisure, Cosmopolitan, Good Housekeeping, you've got to ask yourself, is the magazine dead? So this is just in South Africa. And I can imagine that if you're a magazine publisher, or if you are you own some magazine titles, or you're just a magazine lover, that you'd be really worried about whether the magazine is dead or not. Well, there's a little bit that you need to go a little deeper than that, because the truth is, the reason for these magazine closures may not be simply, and you know what, we've done the COVID-19 thing, where we've confirmed that the reason why businesses are closing now cannot be COVID-19, because if you have a decent business and it can't have a bad quarter, how good can your business be? So the question is, so COVID-19 gets ruled out, because if you were going to close, if you closed because of COVID-19, it means you were in trouble long before COVID-19 came along. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the overtaking of the internet and digital, etc., etc. But the truth is, and this is what I find interesting, it's not just the digital, and that's the truth of it. It's not just the digital. It's not just the internet. It's not just the changing world, etc., etc. In fact, more than that, it's weak ad sales. It's weak marketing. Weak marketing. You know that these companies that have closed here, etc., they've just spent the last 3 decades sitting behind their desk waiting for ads to come in. They don't have reps. They don't have anybody going out aggressively selling, advertising, etc. Do you know that during the 90s, during the heyday of magazine publishing, etc., 80s, 90s, early 2000s, do you know that there were between 3 and 10, sometimes up to 15 magazines launching per year? Do you know that 90% of them closed after 3 issues? Why? They didn't get the ad sales. You know, you get attracted by the razzmatazz of a magazine publishing. You've got all these functions to go to. Everything's going to be great. And as a result of that, you don't focus on advertising. Advertising sales are the priority. There's nothing more important than advertising sales. I made a few notes, by the way, in case you're wondering why I'm looking sideways every 5 minutes. So in actual fact, the real reason is the fact that the ad sales were weak. And then the other thing I need to do is, you know, we've got massive. We've got. You need to have a look at the world, and you need to have a look at any business in the world. Quite frankly, any business. And the truth is that any business in the world needs aggressive marketing. Without a sale, nothing exists. Nothing exists. For everything. For everything. Nothing exists without a sale. And that's the most important thing to understand. And that applies more than anything to magazines. Yes, there are a couple of things on magazines that you need to sort of get your head around, and that's just as important. And those things, you know, first of all, if you take a global outlook, you know, you've got mags growing and you've got mags closing. You've got magazines growing, you've got magazines closing. The magazines that are closing, by the way, are the ones like People magazine or the Gossip magazines, because you can get that instantaneously on the internet. Whereas the ones that are growing are the ones that have proper content with researched articles, etc. The magazines that are really like Forbes, etc., that really bring value in content, they're the ones that are growing. We've got like the Porter magazine phenomenon. So Pret-a-Porter is an online, you may know it, you probably do. They're a multi-billion-dollar business, but they're an online fashion store. It's called Pret-a-Porter. Natalie Portman, etc., all supporters of Pret a Porter. And they launched Porter magazine, a printed magazine. It's berserk. Why would an online business, which had been in business for at least 10 years, suddenly think to itself, you know what, to improve our business we need to launch a printed magazine? It's crazy. Do you know that during the COVID-19, this coronavirus pandemic, that number 5 in the first 3 weeks of lockdowns, etc., number 5 on the list of things that are incredibly bought, in other words, incredibly popular and in incredible demand, are books. Books. Do you know that Amazon last year started building brick and mortar stores? Doesn't that strike you as a little bit strange? So the global outlook on magazine publishing and on printing, etc., is very interesting. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell you a little bit about our experience. First of all, there's less resistance. So when we get on the phones and we're selling magazine advertising, etc., there's much less resistance. About a year ago, I would at least hear 2 or 3 times a day. Considering that I, for example, when I'm selling advertising, I'm aiming to make 100 calls a day. In a day, between 60 and 100, I would get at least 5 people telling me we don't do print advertising anymore. This was a year ago. Today, if I get that in a month, one a month, it's a lot. In other words, people have past the gimmick of just excluding magazine advertising, etc. That's the first thing that I can tell you about our feedback. The second thing is there's less resistance. There's less resistance. There's part of our sales pitch has always been, and I know you're wondering why we're doing print publishing as well. I know you're wondering where I parked my dinosaur. But the truth is we don't need to use that in the pitch anymore because there's less resistance. The advantages of magazines, first of all, unparalleled captive audience. Unparalleled. There's no flashing on the screen. There's no distractions. It's a printed page or printed double page spread that they've opened in front of them. Unparalleled captive audience. That's the first thing. Second thing is, doesn't need an ecosystem. A magazine, a printed magazine, doesn't need an ecosystem. It doesn't need you to have a device. It doesn't need you to have power to have charged that device, insurance to have insured that device, an airtime contract to have connectivity to that device, an app on that device to read what you need to read, and in addition to which, a little bit of text. It doesn't need any of that. A magazine, you just pick it up and read it. It's like a bicycle, as opposed to one of the leading sort of motor vehicles. Like if I take my Beamer, my 7 Series, it's because it's got a computer on board, because everything, etc., it is so advanced. I need so much for it. I need driver's license, I need insurance, I need the car registered and licensed, I need petrol, I need a whole ecosystem to drive that car. But a bicycle, I just get on and just start pedaling. In the same way, a magazine, a digital versus print magazine, is you just start pedaling. Next advantage, not hackable. Not hackable. Nobody knows you're reading it. You're doing it privately. It's not hackable. This is a huge advantage why we still print Diplomat SA, etc. for our diplomatic community, because they have serious concerns when it comes to security. And then, of course, the most obvious one is that your demographic of people 50 years and older prefer printed magazines. So if you need proper penetration, you need to print a magazine. So what's the moral of the story? What lessons can we take from this? First of all, your first lesson is combine printed with digital. You've got to have 3 things. You've got to have a print magazine. If you're a magazine printer, this is what you've got to do. You've got to expand your offering. You've got to have your printed magazine. You've got to add to it an online digital copy of the magazine, and preferably on Magster, Zinio, etc., issue, and so on. But Magster, for example, is stunning. You've got to have it on your website. You've just got to have a flipbook app, and you've got to have a printed magazine, and a digital magazine. That's the thing you need, the second offering you need to add to your printed. And the third is social media. You really need a social media presence. You need to have a social media conversation going on all the time, on as many of the social media ads channels as you can. We, unfortunately, because we've got so many magazines, we stick to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. But essentially, you've got to have a social media thing. That's the first moral of the story. The second is that content is king. Your content is, and the genuineness, the fact that you're an authority on a specific subject, whatever your magazine's about, that's what separates you. Separates you from all the noise on the internet, etc., and all the digital. Obviously, the quality of your content, and have a look at the 4 pillars of publishing. It's a playlist I've got on this channel. Have a look at it, and you'll see what I mean. You must. There are two other things that are just vitally important. The most important, of course, is bold and aggressive marketing. You need to get lead lists together. You need to think to yourself, you know what, I can't visit these people because I don't have time to visit so many people because I'm playing the numbers game. But you need to aggressively market your advertising, etc. One of the things we're doing now with my magazines is we're saying to clients, listen, this is the vehicle to put you back on the map after the COVID pandemic. After we turn the corner on this coronavirus, this is the magazine and online campaign that is going to get you back in front of your buyers. So, I mean, how aggressive can you get? That is the most. So aggressive, make the calls. Remember, gone are the days when the advertising agencies, etc., all just come running after you. Gone are the days when you sit there and just take orders. They're gone. They're gone. You need to advertise, you need to sell ads, and you need to sell ads in a very big way. That's the first thing. The second thing is personalize the experience for your advertisers. We have one tool which is dynamite. I mean, it really does. It's a game changer. And that is that we have photographers dotted all over the country, and whenever anybody advertises with us, whether it's we're profiling a woman in Businesswoman SA magazine, whether we're profiling a lodge in Best Places to Stay in SA, or whether we're profiling a business in Diplomat SA or Logistics SA, whatever we're doing, we send a photographer. And that does two things. First of all, the clients love it because they get such an incredible value add. Because if you're paying 10 grand, 10 South African rand, ZAR, for a page in a magazine, and you're getting a free photo shoot worth like 8 grand to go with it, it's monumental. I mean, it's just spectacular. So we use drones and everything in our photography, and our photographers, a shoot costs me about 2.5 grand. So it's phenomenal. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you do the artwork for a client, the artwork that goes into your magazine, you own that client. So that's why photography, etc., is an incredible thing. So that's the moral of the story. So the bottom line is that, you know what, you may think it's doom and gloom. You may think all these magazines are closing, and you may think it's the end of the magazine industry. Let me tell you something. They're leaving big gaps that you can take over. You can launch magazines in those market spheres, and you know what? You can publish for profit. In other words, what you do is you ratio publish. So you print as many copies, as many pages thick as is supported by the advertising. And I'll do a different video to teach you how to ratio publish. But that's the answer. I'm telling you now. So, moral of the story. First of all, magazines aren't dying. It's the weak that are being, the herd's been thinned. It's the weak that are dying. Those magazine companies that have closed now, and they said it's COVID-19, etc., They closed because they were already closing. They were already in trouble. Already in trouble. They were on a downhill slide as it is. So, quite frankly, eliminating the weak in the herd. And the ones that will be left standing will be stronger for it. If you've got a good magazine, you've got people out there who'll love it. And you know what? People say that the internet coming along is the end of magazines, etc. It's exactly the opposite. It's a boost for magazines. Suddenly you can get the most incredible material and content from all over the world. You can research anything. You can improve your reach. You can improve your circulation. You can improve your leads for ad sales. You can improve everything, everything. The internet has just become an incredible resource. And what better thing than to have a backup digital copy online? What better thing than to have social media discussing your publication? Every time you do a shoot, you quickly post some pics to Instagram, etc. We interviewing and meeting with and profiling with this leading woman in business, etc., etc., blah, blah. People love it. And so what if your print runs are low? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You've got a publication, you've got a media vehicle that in digital form, in print form, and with social media can change people's lives. It's the most astounding thing. Anyway, happy advertising. Don't give up hope. Don't look around you and say, you know what, because these magazines have closed, it's the end of the world for me. It's not.